Welcome in, Seahawks fans, to another live Hawks Eye podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Coots, and today, kind of a different situation. Most of our live preview shows here for Seahawks matchups, we generally have myself, Mookie Alexander, maybe Michael Thompson, or another Seahawks content creator join us. But today, we are going to be joined by Blaine Grisak of the Turf Times, paper or website, as well as the Rams Call Sheet podcast. Blaine's going to come on. We're going to have a good open discussion about this Thursday night matchup. So if you got any questions about the Rams and what he sees from that perspective, make sure you guys put those down in the chat, as well as we'll go through the whole matchup and the reasons why we think either one of these two teams will pull it out on Thursday night for this big rematch. But before we get into that and before we go through that whole discussion piece, if you guys haven't already, like, subscribe to the channel, help me out. I'm close to closing in on 2,000. That's what my goal is for the end of the season. So help me push that over and get 2,000 subscribers before this 2025 NFL season is up, as well as I will be heading down to Senior Bowl coming up in January. Myself, Dan Vians, Brandon Kane, we will be heading down there. Maybe Mookie Alexander will be joining us. So I will be bringing live draft content going into the offseason, starting in January with the Senior Bowl, as well as later tonight, 7 p.m. Make sure you guys have your notifications clicked on for that, because it'll be the Seahawks Syndicate getting back together. I'm a little early doing a first live show, but we'll be back later tonight at 7 o'clock to do a full-on roundtable discussion of this matchup coming up tomorrow night versus the LA Rams. So with all of that taken care of, we'll get chatting with Blaine right after this.
Inside the 15, looks, floats, fires to the end zone. Ball is caught! Touchdown! Seahawks! Dunking it over the bar is Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's on the run, Lynch! 40, pushes the man, 35, look at him go! He's down to 20, 15, he could go! He is gonna go! Touchdown Seahawks! Oh my word! A 67-yard run!
Well, everybody, welcome back in, and welcome to my guest, Blaine, here from the Rams Call Sheet podcast. Blaine, how are you, my friend?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me on again, Bryce. I'm looking forward to talking about this matchup again after it was a fantastic game back in week 11. So, really looking forward to this one and excited to dive in.
I'm hoping in this game, though, Blaine, we do not have a turnover fest on our side, because it would have made that game much more enjoyable for Seahawk fans in the light of that. But let's discuss a little bit about this rematch here, Blaine, and kind of let's start off with it right off of the bat. Why this rematch matters so much, because realistically, at least in my opinion, this is the battle for the NFC West and potentially number one spot in the NFC as a whole. I know the 49ers realistically are still a part of the conversation, but let's be honest here, between a Rams and a Seahawks fan, we don't really count them in that discussion a little bit right now.
Exactly. And unfortunately, if the Rams lose, they kind of bring the 49ers right back into it. So if the Seahawks want to do the NFC West a favor and lose, that'd be great. This game matters a lot, not just for the NFC and for the NFC West title, but just also for the number one seed. Whoever wins this game is going to be in that driver's seat. The Rams had that driver's seat after winning the Week 11, but had a kind of a clunker against the Carolina Panthers the next week. So I think the Rams, they go from I think right now they have a 56% chance of winning of taking the number one seed. If they lose, that drops down to I think like 23%. If they win, it goes up to 90%. So a lot on the line for a late season Thursday night football game.
So what I'm going to ask you here, Blaine, from your perspective, is what makes this rematch more, I guess, obviously we've got what is the winning factor for both teams, but what do you feel makes this rematch maybe more dangerous than the first for the Rams?
I don't know if it's necessarily more. I think the first match might have been more dangerous just because you don't know what necessarily you were expecting from a Seahawks team that I think has surprised a lot of people. A lot of people this year that the Rams kind of know what they're getting. They've seen the Seahawks defense now, which a lot of other teams can't really say. They've seen the Seahawks defense once, and the Seahawks defense is obviously one of the best in the NFL this season. So there's not really any surprises there. But yeah, I think the Rams will just kind of be a little bit more. I don't want to say prepared, but they'll just be more. They'll know what more to expect the second time around than the first time. But as far as I guess it being more dangerous, it's obviously at Lumen Field in Seattle. That stadium gets really loud, especially in a primetime game. So I think from that perspective, it's certainly more dangerous.
Yeah, the weather doesn't look nice. It's supposed to have 20-mile winds, possibly gusting up to 40. It's supposed to rain a bunch. And you guys with Sean McVay don't exactly have the best bad weather record in the NFL. I believe you guys have only won 2 games with Sean there when you guys have faced kind of extreme weather conditions in that regard. So I'll say from the Seahawks perspective, why I find this matchup more dangerous is the fact that our offense is not functioning well. And going into that Rams game we played you guys in SoFi, we were coming off 2 pretty convincing wins against the Cardinals and against the Commanders. And basically since we matched up with you guys, our offense has kind of hit a roadblock, especially in the first half of games. We've only basically averaged 6 points, maybe 9 on the odd time in any of our matchups outside of the Tennessee Titan game. From your perspective, looking at the Seattle offense, do you think there is, a chance that they're able to maybe get it going this week versus your Rams, or do you think the Rams are really going to make life a little bit more difficult for Seattle, even at home?
The Rams, I could see the Seahawks having a strong first drive from that. I guess those scripted plays, as you say. The Rams last couple of weeks, last week they give up the opening drive touchdown. They give up the opening drive touchdown or the big opening drive to the Lions and have a really bad first half. But Chris Shula, I think he's one of the better defensive coordinators when it comes to making in-game adjustments. The week before, they also gave up a big opening drive and then kind of Shula adjusted off of that. So I could see that. It is kind of interesting that you say that. I guess the Rams defense kind of starts slow, and then Chris Shula kind of does his thing as the game progresses. And I guess as you said, the Seahawks have kind of been the same the last couple of weeks. But I guess to that point, Shula's defense has really given Sam Darnold a lot of issues the last couple of years, just because of how they're able to attack him, and he doesn't really do well with interior pressure, and that's where they try to get him, and that's where they've got him the last 2 times that they've gone up against Darnold, and I would expect Shula to attack him in that same way on Thursday night, and if the Rams get to a big early lead like they did back in week 11, I think that kind of puts the Seahawks offense, especially in a poor weather game, not really in a spot where they necessarily want to be.
Well, and that's going to be the interesting thing because, the fact of the weather and everyone's saying how much it may affect the Rams. I would feel more comfortable with Seattle playing that situation if we had a run game that was consistent. And right now that is the least consistent thing on this team is our run game. And we are so heavily based on our passing game. I hope it's a situation where they figure it out, but this late in the season to try and figure out your run game can prove to be rather challenging. The last question I got for you here, Blaine, on this. In your opinion, which team carries more pressure into Thursday night, the Rams or the Seahawks?
I think it's probably the Rams just because there's more expectations there, I guess. I mean, you have this team had high expectations coming into the season. You have Matthew Stafford at 37 years old, who is, as well as he's playing right now, Father Time comes, and it usually comes without warning. So this could very well be Stafford's last big run. So yeah, I think there's certainly more pressure there. Whereas you look at the Seahawks side of things, and they're kind of I don't want to call it they're doing a rebuild by any means, but Mike Macdonald is putting his stamp on this football team, and he's in year 2 of doing it. This team looks like they're going to be good for a long time, whereas Rams kind of are at the end at kind of the twilight, I guess, of one window of one window in one era before they kind of before they kind of enter another one where the Seahawks they're just kind of entering their current era that they're planning to build around.
Yeah, for me, it's interesting because I feel the pressure is more, in honesty, I feel it's more really on the Rams in this because I feel like your window potentially, now hear me out here, I feel your window, especially with Matthew Stafford, is closing, and that quarterback position, as we both know, is such a vital part to any team and any offense. And I feel like this is truly like one of his best shots maybe to get back to a Super Bowl is this team this year. You got Devontae Adams, you got all these pieces, you guys are clicking. In my opinion, he's the NFL MVP right now, the way he has played throughout this entirety of the season. So that's why for me, I'm really leaning it more on you guys. Where I look at Seattle, and it's like almost like Seattle's a year ahead of schedule on where they should be in the Mike Macdonald rebuild. I thought they'd still maybe be a little bit farther behind, but they jumped expectations in a lot of ways for me, and then they really have taken off here. So I think the Rams carry a little bit more because it's more like if the Rams win this, they get the first seed, they get the division. They've got a cakewalk the last two games. What you guys play the Falcons and the Cardinals, right?
The team that everybody forgets about in the NFC West, the Cardinals. Yeah,
exactly. The Cardinals, exactly. The team that the ugly redheaded stepchild basically is what the Cardinals are in this division. Yes. So, so let's talk about this though. Let's talk about what's changed since this first meeting. So, when you look at when the first time these two teams played, they were both kind of coming off of highs in a way, and Seattle especially, like it really looked like, hey, Seattle's arrived. They're ready to really challenge the Rams for the throne of the NFC West. What do you think has changed since that for, say, the Rams in that situation? Do you think the Rams, after losing the Panthers and stuff, do they still look at Seattle as a legitimate threat? And the reason I ask this is Puka Nacua was on, I think it was Fred Warner's podcast or something, and said, at one point that the Niners were really the team that was who concerned him the most. Then I hear Jared Verse the other day saying, no, like the rivalry of Seattle is alive and well. What do you think has changed from the first meeting to now for the Rams in regards to maybe how they look at Seattle?
Yeah, I think they definitely take the Seahawks. They're not taking the Seahawks lightly by any means. I think just because of the territorial rivalry, I guess, between the Rams and 49ers is why Puka would say what he did. But I think Verse is 100% correct in that this Seahawks rivalry is alive and well, and they're certainly not going to be taking this team lightly. And I guess in terms of what's changed since that first meeting, from an offensive perspective, the Rams have really they were a successful running team heading into that first game, and this is kind of where I'm really interested to see how Rams offense does the second time around. It's just especially because the Seahawks run defense is very good. But they've really got that run game going to another level. They've gotten Blake Corum involved a little bit, not a little bit more, a lot more, to go with Kyron Williams, and so they have a little bit of a two-headed monster going there, and they both add Corum's just a little bit more explosive, has a lot more lateral agility than Kyron does, whereas Kyron just kind of still keeps the offense ahead of schedule and ahead of the chains. So I'm excited to see kind of how that develops in this game. And then from a defensive perspective, the Rams have kind of been managing without Quentin Lake. Emmanuel Forbes has been up and down. Had that great game against the Seahawks, but since then he's kind of came back to earth a little bit. So yeah, I think for as far as what's changed, there's that, and then I just kind of from the Seahawks side of things, I'm really looking at Sam Darnold. He the last 2 years he's just absolutely lit it up in the first half of the season. Weeks 1 through 9, he's 5th in EPA per play. Weeks 10 through 18, the last 2 years, he's 14th in EPA per play. The turnover-worthy plays go from 3.6% to 5.1%. As you said, the Seahawks offense has dropped off the last couple of weeks. I think a lot of that does have to do with Darnold. Maybe I don't know if he still has that Week 11 meeting still in his head a little bit, but I don't necessarily. Benjamin Solak from ESPN just wrote a piece, I think yesterday or today, that he hasn't been going for those tight window throws as much as he did, and maybe he's lost a little bit of confidence because of that game against the Rams. So I'm kind of interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, the Ben Solak piece was really interesting to me because it's something I feel like's gone on with Sam, and I think it's really stemmed from that game versus the Rams, which is I almost feel like they're overcoaching Sam a little bit. Like don't make this throw because he had all those turnovers. Don't do this. Don't do that. And his feet now, and part of it too, I think, is the offense itself. Like, I don't know if Kubiak's giving him a lot of answers in certain pass situations because they're such a play action heavy based team. And I think now what's interesting is, with Shaheed there, teams are bringing lighter boxes, but they're still able to stop Seattle's run game and really stifle it. And now you've got that extra guy now back in there with the safety being in that back end of the defense, that too high shell a lot of the time. It makes things rather more difficult to hit sometimes your first read, especially JSN, because teams now can bracket, still have the other safety hanging out there. It makes things a little bit more challenging play action-wise. And this is where, for me, I have one of my biggest concerns with Kubiak is, how are you helping Sam? How are you helping him in the pure drop back? Because as a play action passer, Sam's one of the best in the NFL. The minute you start talking about pure drop back, Sam dips to being in the middle of the NFL. And that's not a drop off you really want to have in your passing offense.
No, exactly, and that's what the Rams have done to Darnold the last really two times they played him. They get him into these drop back situations and make him. He's a quarterback that he trusts his arm a little bit too much sometimes, and I think that's where, especially that first interception back in week 11, he tries to force it over the middle, and it's late and over the middle, and that rarely ends well for the quarterback or the wide receiver. And so yeah, it is interesting that you say that, just because the Seahawks team is, I think I don't want to say it's stacked, because I think that kind of discredits what they're doing, but it's very good, where all Sam Darnold really has to do is keep everything on the tracks, and a four interception game is just completely wrecks the train. But at the same time, you don't want to be playing not to lose or playing scared either.
Totally agree. And that's the thing where I look at it and I go, this is how Kubiak's got to evolve as a play caller. So it'll be interesting to see how that all kind of shapes up. Last thing I got to ask you on, this second go around, but what might change from that first meeting is, how do you think Sean McVay is going to handle the fact Seattle didn't get into a true base defense? When he came out in his 13 personnel, Mike McDonald kind of went, okay, cool, you can do that. I still have Nicky Manwari. I don't have to bail into a true base looking style of defense. How do you think Sean's going to adapt to that, especially now not having Devontae Adams? Do you think they are more in 13 personnel in this game, or do you think there's a chance that maybe Sean gets back into more 12 and 11?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I'm very interested to see, because back in week 11, I think I have it here. They went from averaging 4.7 yards per play out of 13 personnel the 3 weeks before playing the Seahawks, and that dropped to 2.7 yards per play in that game back in week 11. And the Seahawks, because of Nicky Manwari, they're just they're uniquely built to combat what the Rams want to do, and the Rams get 13 personnel because they want defenses in base, and the Seahawks don't have to match their don't have to match 13 personnel in base, because they're just so athletically gifted on the defensive side of the ball. So but yeah, but with Devontae Adams out, I don't necessarily think they have the wide receivers to go 11 personnel, which is what I think McVay would want to do. They have Puka Nacua, obviously, who's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, but behind him without Adams, they have Tutu Atwell, who has kind of fallen out of the offense since coming back from his hamstring injury. Jordan Whittington is fine, but I don't know if he's a guy you want playing 60-70% of the snaps. Same with Konate Mumfield. Mike LaFleur said compared his skill set to Devontae Adams earlier this week, and that was not something I necessarily. I love Konate Mumfield. I loved him during the draft last year, but just no. And then they have Xavier Smith, so they just don't have three wide receivers that you necessarily want on the field 60% of the time. So I do think, especially with the way Colby Parkinson is playing, Colby Parkinson, 6 touchdowns over the last 6 weeks, had the incredible touchdown last week against the Detroit Lions. Terrence Ferguson is playing a lot more. He's actually blocking very well. The last couple of weeks, I think the last 3 weeks, PFF has him as the number 1 rated run blocker among tight ends. So that he's coming along a little bit. Him and Stafford just need to get on the same page. They've missed on a few over the last month, but so yeah, I think just kind of how their personnel is from a health standpoint. I see them kind of leaning into 13 personnel and living or dying by it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting a chess match because there's one question I'm going to bring up here from one of our viewers in here, which I think is a great one. It's from Misfit 13 Actual. Goes, Bryce asked Dan, so Dan VMs from Seahawks and Rams asked him the same question and the answer made sense, but wanted your take with the Kendrick being a turncoat. Do you think Mike changes some schemes and game plans or signals, etc.? I think there's a potential to, but you got to remember, signals really aren't a huge thing in the NFL right now with the green dot system and being able to talk straight into the linebackers, in this case Ernest Jones. Now the secondary may change some things up a little bit, but again, like, I don't know if it'll be a huge thing. You may see the odd thing. What you may see is Mike change tendencies. That's more of a big thing for coaches. Isn't so much, hey, what does this signal mean? What does that signal mean? It's more of, okay, what does Mike like to do tendency-wise in 3rd and 7 in this area of the field? Those are the type of things where Mike might change a little bit of what they do. They may still bring essentially the same pressure, or they may run the same coverage, but they're going to run it from a different look at a different time that won't look the way that maybe Kendrick was used to it. I don't know if it's all that important, but it's definitely to keep something, to keep an eye on for. What are your thoughts on that, Blaine?
Yeah, I don't think it's as big of a I don't think it's as big of a deal as some might make it out to be. I mean, there might be some things that Kendrick might be able to tip McVay on, or say, hey, when you do this is how they might match you or whatnot. But like you said, I especially with defense and with defense in a matchup like this, I think, like you said, it's much more about tendencies than the actual checks.
All right, well, let's take a look and let's move ahead here. I want to get, let's talk about this for a little bit. And I want to kind of get your thoughts on this, Blaine, to an extent. And this is kind of my Seahawks perspective on what must be different for them to get a victory in this game. A couple things for me. The offensive pacing and the early down efficiency has to be better versus you guys. I think that's something that we struggled with. Obviously, in the first game, we had the 4 interceptions. But that, to me, is something that is massively a talking point in this game. Another thing is the discipline versus the Rams playmakers, obviously, especially the fact you guys use all 4 tight ends rather effectively. That's another thing for me where I look at it and I go like, yeah, okay, this is something we really need to make sure we're disciplined defensively. And the other thing is Seattle's got to find a way to dictate some terms to you guys, whether it's in the line of scrimmage, whether it's, in the run game, in something. Seattle's got to find a way to start dictating terms again. So I'm going to say, from your perspective as a Rams fan, what does Seattle have to fix from the last time we played you to really actually give you guys a true scare? Even though the game was, a 2-point game, what do they really have to do to make you as a Rams fan sit there and go, okay, this is different than the last time we played Seattle?
Yeah, I think it starts with protecting the football, honestly. Like the Seahawks, I think, rank second in the league in turnovers, and they are, I think, the only team inside the top 10 in turnovers on offense that currently has a winning record. So if Sam Darnold can protect the football, if the Seahawks don't make the self-inflicted errors, like they did the same thing against the Houston Texans earlier in the season and got away with it. So if the Seahawks can protect the football in this game, I think that would be huge. That would be huge. Also, if they score touchdowns in the red zone, last week the Seahawks, was it 5 field goals? 5 field goals they had, 6 field goals, whatever it was.
6 field goals.
Yeah. And then back when they played the Rams, it was the turnovers, but they also just settled. They settled for field goals a lot too. So yeah, I think those are two really big. Those are two really big things in this game, and those field goals that Seahawks settled for. It was a 2-point game, but you scored 1-2 more touchdowns, and the Seahawks. It's not a close game. A close game the other way, even with the turnovers. So those are two really big things for me from the Seahawks side.
Yeah, and so the last thing I'll ask you, for me, when it comes to fixing this, I think Seattle's got to run the ball. And they've got to run the ball effectively. That, I think, goes to your point of taking away the turnovers, because it limits, Sam's pass attempts, because in the last game when we played you guys, Sam was, I think, in the third quarter of that game, and he almost had 35 attempts at that point, where most of the season he averaged under 30 attempts for an entire game. I think the other thing for Seattle to have a chance in this game outside of, the turnovers is Clint Kubiak has to get over this bugaboo of playing teams that know the style of offense he wants to play, whether it's the 49ers or the Rams, whatever it is, he decides he is the cook in the kitchen and he burns all the entrees. Like the minute there's some sort of person that has an idea of what he is going to prepare and cook, it's some food critic that's going to show up that knows the recipes of the restaurant, he panics. And that's something he can't do tomorrow night. He has to be better at staying with things and having some answers for the understanding, like, look, this team is going to take some of the things away that I like to do well, or that we do well. So how do I handle that? How do I, elevate this offense to a point where it actually can still function? Because the Rams are going to get their moments, and that's a given. It's a divisional game. They're two evenly matched teams, but you can't let them be massive moments.
Yeah, and I think you and I kind of talked about that after the last game too. I think you mentioned me something about why didn't the Seahawks run the ball more? And the Rams they want to play these light boxes. That's what they want. That's what they want to do. They don't want to play in their base defense. They don't want to play nickel very often. They want to get into these heavy defensive back sets where they're playing a lot of dime. So if you can run against that and then force Shula to play heavier, get another linebacker on the field. I also think that opens things up for JSN. JSN against the Rams last time had 2.44 yards per route run, which is the second most of the season. He had 1.83 yards per route run when the Rams were in dime. So if you get the Rams in those heavier packages, that opens things up that takes the defensive back off the field, opens things up there, and creates those explosive plays that the Seahawks thrived on early in the year.
Well, and the one thing too, I think Chris Shula did a fantastic job on, and this is another thing they're gonna have to do to win this game, is they have to have better quick game concepts to get off the press, because that's one thing the Rams did so well in that game was they got up in the face of the Seahawks receivers and disrupted the quick game timing. And Sam was clutching the ball. He was double hitching, almost triple hitching sometimes to get rid of it. They have to have better combinations to be like, okay, the Rams are going to come up and press. We have to be able to get off of these, A, and B, we got to have some things that are going to sit down in windows to get the ball out of Sam's hand, because one big piece of this game that's, going to be a huge talking point, I think, outside of Devontae Adams being out, is Charles Cross is now out with a hamstring injury, which is massive as our left tackle being out.
Yeah, just ask Sam Darnold what happened the last time he was out. He was out as left tackle against the Rams. It didn't end very well with him in that wild card playoff game with the Vikings. So yeah, that's a big one for sure. And I mean, even if you go back to, I think, what's the first meeting last year against the Seahawks, I think Cross went down after the first half in that game too, and that's kind of when that game changed there as well.
Yeah, no, that did change. So I'll ask you this. Which Seahawks player, in your opinion, has the biggest opportunity to swing this game in their favor?
I think we talked about the run game, so I'll go with Kenneth Walker. I think Zach Charbonnet, just if you can kind of get him utilized as a receiver a little bit. This Rams defense kind of struggles to defend running backs in the pass game, and I do like Charbonnet there, but I think you got to go with the guy that makes this offense special, and that's JSN. I mean, he's the most dangerous player on that offense. I think we'd be naive for me to say that the Rams are going to shut him down in two games. I expect him to have his moments in this one, and he's definitely, I think, the player that I'm the most afraid of for sure.
I think for me, the Seahawks had the biggest, or has the biggest opportunity to swing this game in their favor, is Sam Darnold. If Sam Darnold plays a clean, or as clean as possible, like if there is a turnover, let's not make it a massive momentum shifting turnover kind of a thing like there was, in past games. But if Sam plays a relatively clean game, I think that gives Seattle the biggest opportunity, because if you realistically look at it, you take maybe two of those turnovers away, especially to the last one on the jump pass in that first matchup, we might win that game.
However, I mean, even that first turnover, he threw the interception, put the Rams in score and right back in the red zone.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing, is if you take two of those away, the Seahawks probably walk away with this game. If Sam can play a clean game and still let it rip, not be tentative, not be hesitant, probably gives the Seahawks the best chance to win and the biggest opportunity to swing this game in their favor. So, but I want to get this from you now, Blaine. In the Rams' perspective, what do you guys have to do to make sure you win this football game?
Yeah, I think it's just it's offensive consistency and staying ahead of the chains and finding a way to run the ball successfully against this defense. Like I said, the Rams right now have one of the best, probably the best rushing attack in the NFL. FTN Fantasy has their offensive line is just absolutely dominating in the run game, especially with Warren McClendon playing at right tackle, which will be different from the first matchup. They had Rob Havenstein there. So Warren McClendon has been playing very well on that right side, especially in the run game. But as far as staying ahead of the chains, the last two times the Rams have gone up against the Seahawks defense, they are 5 for 25 on third down. 20% conversion rate on third down just isn't going to cut it. This offense has you take away Kyron Williams' big 34-yard run in that first game, and I think he would have averaged 2.7 yards per carry or something crazy like that in that first game. He had 12 for 91, but I don't think that really tells the full story. The Rams really struggled to run the ball in that first matchup, and you need to be able to run the ball to stay ahead of the chains and give yourself third and manageables. And without a second receiving option in Devontae Adams, you are setting yourself up for failure in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. So if the Rams have another game on third down like they had the last two times against this Mike McDonald defense, I don't like their chance. I don't really like their chances. And then on defense again, I think you have to create opportunities against the Seahawks offense. They've proven over the season that they will give you opportunities from a turnover standpoint. And then again, Chris Shula is just he has this bend don't break kind of MO on defense, and so when it gets down to the red zone, they just got to be able to lock in.
Yeah, the thing I've got to ask you, though, from this perspective is without Devontae Adams now, he has been, I would say in some respects, I know Puka's there and Puka's done a phenomenal job this year, but it seems to me like Devontae Adams has kind of almost filled that security blanket role for Matthew Stafford to an extent that Cooper Kupp left when he came up here to Seattle. So, with that being said, is it really going to be on this tight end group then to make up for that loss of Devontae Adams for this game of being the guys that can really create those second options? Or, and my other question on this is, do the running backs become more involved in the passing game to make up for that?
I don't think it's the running backs. They don't have good hands, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it does have to be the I do think it has to be the tight ends. Like I said, Colby Parkinson is playing really well over the last month or so. The Rams have kind of slowly worked in Terrence Ferguson, and I think this is a game where maybe he can get going a little bit. And Ferguson he has the size and the speed to line up out wide in that kind of where Devontae Adams would be in those moments. It's just a matter of him and Stafford at this point. Connecting. Last week, Stafford overthrew him on what would have been a short touchdown, and then Ferguson dropped what would have been a tough catch in the end zone later on. And then I think you got to look at Tutu Atwell too. I mean, the Rams paid him $10 million fully guaranteed in the offseason, and he's done pretty much absolutely nothing this year outside of the game-winning play against the Indianapolis Colts early on in the season. So just. If there's a game for why you pay Tutu Atwell $10 million fully guaranteed, this is that game. So maybe he becomes that second option. But in the go-to moments on third down, fourth down, Stafford is probably going to lock in on Puka Nacua, and I'll be interested against the Seahawks secondary that plays really fast if that ends up leading to a few mistakes.
The thing for me that'll be really interesting in that matchup with the Seahawks secondary is in this last game we played the Colts, one thing I saw was a lot of Josh Jobe on the field, and he had an up and down game, and he's kind of had a bit of an up and down second half of the season in some respects. Reek Woolen has really played well. And even in that matchup with the Rams, I thought, played a better game than he had in the past. And McVay has usually done a pretty good job of attacking Reek at points in key situations because he knows he's going to struggle. I'll be interested to see how they handle Puka. And then to your point, is it Tutu Atwell? Is it the tight ends or who else they use in this passing game? How Seattle ends up handling that, because when they do go to these 13 personnel looks, it really kind of makes it difficult sometimes for a corner to have to chase a tight end across the field in coverage if they're in man at any point in time as well.
Yeah. You're 100% right, and I think that's where a guy like Terrence Ferguson that kind of comes into play. And like I said, they've started to work him in a little bit more. He played at his highest snap percentage last week. So with Devontae Adams out and leaning on the tight ends a little bit more, I'd expect him to kind of continue to be a big part of this offense.
All right, let's take a look here now at the keys to victory for the Seahawks. So in this one, key number one I've got, and I kind of want to get your perspective on my keys, Blaine, see if I'm way off in what you think. But key number one is, and I've said it all season long with this team, especially on offense, is they got to win on early downs and stay ahead of the chains. Seattle, the longer they've gotten into third and long situations, especially over this last, I'd say 4-game stretch here, they have struggled mightily. They were 2 of 13, I think, in this past game, this past weekend versus the Colts. How do you think that'll affect the Rams if Seattle's actually able to get out of going into a lot of third and longs and really press that initiative, staying in early downs and stay ahead of the chains?
I mean, that neutralizes the Rams' strength on defense. The Rams want you in those 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, so they can pin their ears back and let those pass rushers get after the quarterback. You look at how the Rams lost to the Carolina Panthers a few weeks ago, and they were able to Puna Ford was out in that game, so the Rams for the most part have stopped. They've been a very good run defense, but he played, I think, only like 15% of the snaps in that game, dealing with an injury. But you look at the Panthers game, and the Panthers were able to run the ball consistently, stay ahead of the chains, and that really neutralized what the Rams wanted to do on defense. And this, like I said, this Rams defense really thrives in those third and long situations, so that Jared Verse, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk can really just kind of focus on getting after the quarterback. And that's not a situation where the Seahawks team without the left tackle wants to be in.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to say. The one thing about the Panthers, though, they do tend to do better than Seattle is run the football, which kind of helps them out in that situation.
Yeah.
So, key number 2, eliminate explosive plays and make the Rams drive the field, especially given the weather conditions. If Seattle can keep that run game bottled up, not give Kyron Williams or Blake Corum, some 30-plus yard runs in this game, I think it'll make things difficult on Matthew Stafford to have to drive the whole field in those conditions in Seattle on a wet and windy night.
Yeah, I like I touched on earlier. The Rams are 5 for 25 on third downs. The last 2 times they've gone up against this Mike McDonald defense, and you force the Rams into driving the ball, or into these 8, 9, 10, 12 play drives. Yeah, you're probably going to be facing a few third downs to take away those explosive plays, make things a lot more difficult for this Rams offense. And yeah, I agree with that.
All right, and my final key for a Seahawks win here, Blaine, I know this is such a point of that you don't really want to talk about, but the final one is win the situational football. And I think this one to me is kind of massive. It's like convert your third downs, obviously finish in the red zone, play clean late in the game. But I think the other thing I'll say about the win situational football for me in this is Mike McDonald might have to get a little uncomfortable and maybe go for it a time or two that he doesn't necessarily feel like it's the best thing to do, to maybe swing some, momentum or flow of the game in their direction, or just to try and stay on the field and keep the Rams off of it.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's And then that's one thing I think McVay has been a lot better at this year than he has been in the past is going for it on fourth down. Last week he went for it on 4th and 8, and it ended up working out. Went for it on fourth and 3, and it ended up working out. They converted a 4th and 1 last week as well. And all 3 drives either ended they ended in points, and 2 of the 3 ended up in touchdowns. So if you can. Like I kind of talked about earlier, if you can take, a red zone drive that, maybe you would settle for a field goal on a 4th and 3 or whatnot, and, going for it, and it ends up resulting in 6 points and resulting in a touchdown. That's the difference in this type of game.
All right, Blaine, let's kind of talk about some X factors in this game. And so my first question for you, who's the unexpected name we'll be talking about Friday morning after this game that made a massive impact?
Oh boy, I think from the Rams' perspective, I'll say it's Colby Parkinson. This is kind of a bit of a revenge game for him. He's going back to Seattle. He's been playing some of the best football of his career over the last month. Really filling in for Tyler Higbee, who's on injury reserve, filling in for Tyler Higbee really well. 6 touchdowns over the last 6 games. The Rams are going to be without their primary red zone threat. Adams is doubtful, so he probably doesn't play. So if he is out, Colby Parkinson, I think, is someone that the Rams might rely on a little bit more in the red zone, and just with how he's played over the last month, he's someone I have my eye on.
Now, I'll ask you this, from the Seahawks perspective, in a situation where Seattle wins this game and you guys in LA are all sad on Friday morning, who would you say would be the Seahawk name that you think would be the one to stand out and make the biggest difference that no one's really talking about?
I'll say it is. Let's see. Oh boy, I will say. I'll say Rashid Shaheed makes a big play and gets one over the top against a defense that without Quentin Lake has kind of been more susceptible to those explosive plays.
It's actually funny you say that, because if Sam had thrown it a little bit farther in the first game, he actually had a touchdown to Shaheed over the top. So maybe they get it this time. For me, if I'm looking at the Rams and I'm talking about X factors I think will give them a victory in this game, I'm probably leaning to Blake Corum, where I think somehow Blake Corum just, again, has a phenomenal game. And I wouldn't say he's unexpected, but he is the backup running back in a timeshare to Kyron Williams. I think there's a chance that Blake Corum has a big game. Seattle's in trouble. And then the name for Seattle that we're talking about Friday morning and Seattle wins this game, I'm going to go. It's crazy for me to say this, but I'm going to go with Anthony Bradford. And the reason I say Anthony Bradford's name is if Anthony Bradford has a really solid game, and that's why I say it's unexpected, because Anthony Bradford, if you know anything, Blaine, he is like the most, lightning rod topic in the Seahawks world when it comes to the offensive line. But if Anthony Bradford has a really good game on Thursday night and handles Fisk and a lot of these, interior parts of this Rams defensive line, and we're able to get a run game going, and maybe I'll add Jalen Sundell into that unexpected name group as well. I'll do a 2-for-1 there. If those two can get it going on the O-line, I think there's a chance Seattle wins this game, because the run game will be the biggest difference given the weather conditions. So those are my unexpected names to watch that'll help either team Friday morning with a victory.
I honestly almost went in there. Jalen Sundell, I don't think played in that week 11 matchup earlier this season, and Olutami, I didn't really have a good game then, and then I also have written down here Bradford playing better. So I think the last 3 weeks
he's been much better. Honestly, I was very critical of Bradford after the Minnesota game, and right after the game, I was very critical. And I had to roll back my comments on that the following day after I got to dive into the All-22, and I went, Flores did a very good job manipulating pressures and line adjustments, and Bradford actually played a pretty clean game. And since then he has played much better. And I know it drives some people crazy, like John McGrath, for me to be saying that. I know it drives you crazy in the chat, John. I know, and you probably want to knock me off 13-4 Island because I'm sitting here going, Bradford's not all that bad, but I don't think Bradford will be a Seahawk in 2026, but for what they've got right now, he's doing okay. The biggest factor is Jalen Sundell is the better pass protecting center between Olu and himself. And that's where I think you saw Olu struggled in his first start pass protecting against this Rams offensive line. That's maybe an edge that we get a little bit as we have our better center overall back potentially going forward. Now he's got to get his run game going, so that's a whole nother thing. Here's the other question I got for you. What decision could fans second guess the most afterwards? So from a Rams perspective, Blaine, what do you think could be a decision Sean McVay makes in this game that's really going to have you guys second guessing it?
Given Sean McVay's history, it'll probably be some timeout timing, or he runs out of all 3 of his timeouts in the second half within the first 10 minutes, or something crazy like that. But I think just with how aggressive McVay has been on 4th downs, and like we talked about, this is a game where, you know, if you can turn 3 into 6, it could be the difference. But those types of decisions are always taken in hindsight, and when you fail, they get criticized by the fans and by the media. So I could see and it happened, you know. But back in week 5, when the Rams lost to 49ers, McVay goes for that 4th and 1 in overtime, going for just gone for the tie, and the 49ers end up making the stop, and the Rams lose that game. I could see a similar situation here where McVay goes for it on 4th down or something late in the game, or going for it or early on, and they miss, ends up coming back to bite them, where you're second guessing that when all is said and done.
Okay, so on my end, on the Seahawks side, I think it's going to be a situation where Mike Macdonald doesn't go for it on a 4th down that could change the game, where he decides to take a long field goal opportunity, or maybe he punts it in a situation where Seattle's actually got some momentum going. They've sustained some actual, drives in the game. And it's an opportunity maybe to, if you go for it on a 4th and short with the barnyard or something and get it, it might be an opportunity to stamp out the Rams and actually get a chokehold on the game. And I got a weird feeling that it could be a situation where Seahawks fans second guess it when he decides to put the defense back out there and give Stafford and McVay another go. And that's something and that's not against our defense, because I think we have the best defense in the NFL right now. But it's one of those things where McVay and Stafford are such a dangerous duo together. You don't want to give them more, bites at the apple and opportunities.
Yeah. It is interesting that McDonald just isn't more aggressive in those situations, I guess, especially coming from John Harbaugh, where Harbaugh I think is one of the more, or he at least in his history suggests that he's been one of the more aggressive 4th down play callers, and McDonald maybe it's just him being a defensive coach and whatnot, and trusting his defense, but it's just kind of interesting that he's not more aggressive in those situations.
All right, Blaine. So this is something I do on all my live shows. I have a 12s Q&A blitz. So it's for all the people in the chat that have been in here. And so what we normally do is we'll just go through. We'll answer some of the questions here as we wrap up the show today. So John McGrath comes in, 13-4, 2 playoff wins. We drew the line in the sand of the island in the preseason, and we're still standing tall, loud and proud, Bryce. So me and John, just to give you some context here, Blaine, we are 2 of the few people that went on 13-4 island publicly, that we were going to stay on that island. We did have a few other individuals that were there, and as Seattle lost a few games, people decided to jump off the island and take their little rowboats and go to 12-5 and 11-6 island. But me and John have kind of hunkered down here and built ourselves a snorkel shed and a little bar on the island here. So we're hanging out. But congratulations also, John, on becoming a moderator of the chat with Amy Holmes and Ian Victor. So make sure you don't abuse those powers, please, sir. And, look after the chat while we have these live shows. So congratulations on that. Let's take a look here at this one. We got Sasquatch in here. Weather looks nasty for tomorrow's game. That's something I've been seeing in the chat a lot, is it does not look good. And your Rams are still, I think, stuck in LA right now, Blaine.
Yeah, I saw that they did have a little bit of an issue with their flight, and it was getting delayed, and they're looking at potential alternatives on getting up to Seattle tonight. Hopefully, shouldn't be too much of an issue with LA and Seattle being on the West Coast. But yeah, this could end up being a factor in this game. I think you look at. You talked about earlier the Rams' record under Sean McVay has been great in cold weather. Although I do think this Rams team in particular is more built for these types of games just because with how well they're running the ball right now, and they're okay, getting down into these 12, 13 personnel sets, 12 personnel sets, and just playing that nasty nitty gritty football that just getting tough and winning ugly, which is needed when the weather isn't great. And I think you look back at 2023, Rams played a game in Baltimore against Mike McDonald, and Matthew Stafford had one of his best games that season in that game.
That is a fair point. John comes back. He goes, why don't we see the Seahawks pass to their running backs out of the backfield like the other top teams do? Doesn't even seem like they have designed plays for it. John, this has been one of my biggest gripes this year with this offense is that you do have some backs that can catch out of the backfield well. Unlike, as Blaine, told us about the Rams, they have backs that don't generally catch well out of the backfield. Seeing K9 out of the backfield would be definitely a welcome sight. I don't have a good answer for you. I don't know if it's because they don't trust the offensive line's pass protection. And this is something, that I mentioned in one of the Hawks film breakdowns I did with Dan, where I talked about how Seattle is kind of getting toyed with these sim pressures where they keep extra guys in and guys don't actually end up coming. And now you've taken guys out of routes down the field. And I'll be honest, I know Hawk Blogger had Matt Hasselbeck on his show the other day, and I couldn't agree more with what Matt said. When you're a quarterback and you go into empty and you have all your guys out in routes, yes, you only have 5 guys protecting, but if you know there's a blitz coming and you know who your hot guy is, it makes it really easy because the defense is stressed with all those guys out running patterns. Somebody ends up being open. Sometimes when you get in situations where you go into max protects with 7 or 8 guys and you only have 2 guys or maybe 3 guys running patterns versus 7 defenders in the back end, it can make things challenging for a quarterback because those windows now get awfully tight to make those throws. And that's part of the reason I think maybe you've seen, to Benjamin Slowak's point on his that you brought up earlier, Blaine, why Sam Darnold's now struggling in those tight window throws, because now they have more guys in coverage and Seattle's going with more max protect blocks in a lot of situations.
Yeah. I think it's easier said than done to get your running backs involved in the passing game. Like the Rams also have one of the better offenses in the NFL, and they don't. And this is just because their running backs unfortunately have rocks for hands. They just said Blake Corum's had a couple drops this year. Kyron is an okay pass catcher, but he's not Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey by any means. He's okay at catching the occasional check down, but I would absolutely love it if just with how the Rams offense is built, their offensive linemen play very well in space. I would absolutely, and just with how shifty and explosive Blake Corum is, I would love to see a running back screen. It's just not something that unfortunately happens.
Yeah, unfortunately, looks like we've got Payo Time Rams YouTube in here. Question: do you think Colby Parkinson is the difference for the Rams in this game? Revenge game narrative. I'll let you take this one, Blaine, because this is one of your, I think, viewers.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think Colby Parkinson. There is potential for Colby Parkinson to be the X factor in this one. He's playing very well right now. He had a career high 75 yards last week. He's filled in very nicely for Tyler Higbee, 6 touchdowns in 6 games. This is Seahawks that in moments this year has kind of struggled a little bit defending tight ends. So and just with Devontae Adams being out, a lot more I think is going to be expected of this tight end group, and I think Parkinson could be the guy that kind of steps up there.
All right, next one here is from John. I think that we'll use the tight ends to help block and get the run game going again. Callerup and Saubert are solid blockers. John, I'm going to switch one name out of there. I think it's Robbie Oots and Saubert that are going to be the key in this one. Robbie Oots being healthy, scratched in this last game. It had to be something to do with his elbow because it didn't make sense all of a sudden not to. And I know some people are saying about Robbie Oots, oh, well, he's struggling. Yeah, but when this run game did have its best moments early on in the year, you had Eric Saubert and you had Robbie Oots in there. And I think Kubiak needs to get back to a bit of that 21 personnel and 22 personnel with 2 running backs and 2 tight ends in there. I think that's going to be key. And I think, the one thing with Saubert in there too is I think he's actually a underrated receiving threat in some respects. We saw him in this last game catch one for 9 yards. I think that you're going to have to get him involved in the pass game as well to help, get this run game going a bit in that regard, John. So it'll be interesting to see the least. And here you go. There you go, Blaine. Sup, Blaine and Hawks fans, stoked for this game.
And I think just on that point about the tight ends too, I think that's a way that you can really kind of neutralize Jared Verse a little bit. He's kind of, I don't want to say he struggled against teams chipping him, but teams are chipping him a lot, and because of that, the pressure rate just hasn't been as consistent as consistent as it was last year. So if you can leave a tight end in there, or give him a chip before releasing, that's I think a way you can help your backup left tackle out a little bit.
All right, we got Titan Maniac in here. Cross being out will be a challenge in the pass protection game. I think yes, and it sounds like it's 2 to 4 weeks, which is what I kind of suspected before it got announced, as I figured Cross might be out longer than people anticipated till the playoffs. And it's a hamstring. That's not something that's easy for a pass protecting left tackle to deal with, is a hamstring injury. But I will say this, I have not felt this good about a backup tackle playing in years in Seattle, because of the fact I think Josh Jones is capable of holding it down for the next 3 games or so. And you know what? Like, in this situation, again, if Seattle can run the ball and Seattle can do a few different things, and maybe you keep a tight end in to help chip against a Jared Verse type edge rusher, you might be able to get away with it a little bit in this game. But this is, again, a situation where you have to game plan for this. And Kubiak has to not put Sam in situations, or Josh Jones in situations, where they're on an island.
Yeah, it's Josh Jones. I think just contrary to maybe other backup left tackles, he has a lot of experience. He's a very experienced player, and I think in a game like this, that certainly works out in the Seahawks. But the Seahawks benefit against this pass rush.
Well, considering we're not rolling Stone Forsythe out against you guys in this game, I feel a little bit more, less worried in that situation, considering, if it was Stone Forsythe we were rolling out there, Mike Jarrell, I might be very, very concerned and already go, okay, well, this game's not going to go in our direction. We got Rockman in the house. He goes, we got to run the ball not run the ball in obvious rundowns. Teams know too well when we run. That is a gripe I will be talking about on probably the Seahawks Syndicate later tonight, because it is driving me absolutely nuts, Rockman, as a offensive coach myself, watching us run it consistently when I can sit there and go, yeah, we're going to run the ball. Yeah, we're going to run the ball. It's first down. We're going to run the ball. Like, change it up, do different things. And when I say change it up, that doesn't mean all of a sudden run a pitch play to Rashid Shaheed that teams might be expecting to come, because it comes out of a random formation. They don't see Seattle run very often. So we got Brian in the house. Goes, latest forecast from Weather Underground. Rains pretty much over by kickoff, 52 degrees. The headliner is the wind. It's supposed to be 17 miles per hour sustained. And in that stadium, that is not fun to deal with, because it swirls in there sometimes.
Yeah.
What else do we got? I'll give you credit here, Brian, for this. He's talking with Rockman in the chat. I've been bouncing around all over today. Brandon twice, Hawk Blogger a few minutes ago. Now I'm here. Again, I appreciate everybody that was over in Hawk Blogger or over on Hawk's Nest for coming back into here and watching the show. I know Amy did it. I know there's a few more others that have done it. I really appreciate you guys' support and bouncing around all the Seahawk content creators. I know it's probably a very busy week for all of you to ingest all the Seahawk content, as the game's only, a day away now, if that. So I appreciate all the support from you guys. We've got a 49ers fan in the house. We got AB 49ers. Hope Seattle wins. So if the Niners and Seattle play in week 18, then we'll be playing for a division title. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. If Seattle does win this game, it really makes this division more interesting down the stretch, I think, in the long run of things, Blaine.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. The one I would watch for if I'm the Niners, they play the Bears in a couple weeks, and that Bears team is looking very good.
Is that in Chicago?
Let me double check here. Let's see. No, it's in San Francisco, that one. Yep. But
I was gonna say the 49ers going to Chicago, just like who was it this past week that was in Chicago versus the Bears? That was a ridiculous. I don't know if you saw
the Cleveland, yeah.
Yeah, Cleveland. I don't know if you saw, but someone had a video. They were there in the stands, and basically they opened up their Pepsi bottle and basically dumped it in their glass, and it turned to a slush puppy as they were pouring it. It was so cold there. So that would have made things interesting. I'd rather be flying next wing. Always good to see you in here. My friend goes, do you think if we start off with quick throws and runs under center, slow down the pass rush bit, we can help the line protect enough later in the game to get big plays? I think big plays are going to be tough if that's what the weather is saying. 17-mile-an-hour winds to throw into as a quarterback and even throw with. So that's the one thing I'll say here that, most people think about as a quarterback throwing into the winds, the most challenging thing. It is the most challenging when you are trying to unload a deep ball and put air underneath it for your DB to get to, or your receiver to get to, and not the DB. That's where throwing into the wind is an issue. But throwing slants, anything under 15 yards, it's intermediate. If you got a nice tight spiral on that ball, it will still cut through that wind. However, flipping that the other way, when you're throwing with the wind, that can be more challenging because for what you think you normally would have to put on a ball, you do, and it sails an extra 5-10 yards, or if you're trying to throw something that's a bit of an outside for your receiver to get towards the sideline, all of a sudden now you got to, angle yourself more inward to throw that ball because the wind's going to carry it a bit. Throwing with the wind can actually be more challenging for a quarterback sometimes. What do we got here? We got Spock in here goes, Hawks need to play smart, tough, and fundamental. Yep. It's a divisional game. You got to definitely do that. And the final one, John, it wouldn't be 13-4 Island without you, Bryce. Dan bailed. You didn't. I was never going to bail. I was sitting there the entire time. That is where I'm going to be, and that's where I'm going to stay for the entirety of the season unless Seattle somehow proves me wrong there, John. So let's see. What else do we got in this chat here? I'm just having a look through. We got, I think it's Jeanette in here. The script is Seahawks need to run the ball to wear down the front four. Otherwise, they will intimidate Darnold enough to make mistakes, and the weather will also affect Sam's passing.
I guess, Bryce, from your perspective, is the Seahawks run game more of an offensive line issue, a schematic issue, a predictability issue? What are your thoughts, I guess?
Can I say all of the above?
Sure, yeah.
That's kind of where it's at. No, because here's the thing I look at it. I'll just answer this quickly, Blaine, and then we'll get to your question. Goes, Janet comes back in. I think Ferguson will be a factor, but Mumfield having a breakout game in the red zone to help without Adams. So that's a fair point, I guess. But to get to your point here, Blaine, about the Seahawks run game, I think it's a little bit of everything. And the reason I say that is I think one thing for Charbonnet and for Kenneth Walker, they've had to go through 3 different offensive coordinators in 3 seasons. You went from Shane Waldron to Ryan Grubb to Clint Kubiak, and they're all very different in what they want to do with the run game, right? Shane was here. It was a bit gap, power, and zone. You went to Grubb, and we didn't know what we had. It was a bit of everything, a master of nothing, basically. And then you come to Kubiak, and it's supposed to be this wide zone scheme with some duo and gap kind of intertwined into it. So like a 75 outside zone, 25 inside between the tackle, gap, power kind of stuff. And it hasn't really materialized into that. It's almost like it's, I'd say 60 outside, then you get, 20 of it being inside zone, and now 20 of it's gap, power, and duo stuff. I think that's messed up with the running backs and messed them up and is giving them a challenge. I think the offensive line schematically has some issues just in personnel. Again, I don't think Anthony Bradford's a great zone scheme fit. He's more of if he can get his hands on you initially and just drive you, great, which fits great for gap power.
Yeah.
Zone, as you know, and especially what your Rams offensive line's done, you got to be able to play in space. And that's one thing I think, again, this is where I go to Kubiak in the scheme. McVay started as a wide zone guy.
Yeah.
And then he worked gap power in, and now he's found this ability to kind of be both. Yeah. He's got guys that can run zone, an outside zone, and then if he needs to, he can come back in and gash you in gap power. That's where I look at the scheme and I go, okay, this is great. The Texans ran it for years with Arian Foster, but when teams figured out how to play it, made it challenging because they struggled to go inside. This is where I think for Kubiak, this is where his evolution as a play caller, and this is why I'm so reserved back on him as he's a head coaching candidate. Like, he's never been in this position before as an OC where he's on a team that's going into a playoff run and been one of the best offenses in the NFL where teams are constantly hyper-focused on what they're doing and trying to shut it down. And I don't think he has enough counters yet in his, playbook for teams that take things away from him yet. And that's the one thing he's got to do. And I think self-scouting in the offseason will be huge for him and potentially getting a right guard that fits their scheme better than what they currently have, because I don't think the right guard that will start this year start next year is on the Seahawks roster currently.
Interesting. No, that's great insight. I know. Thank you for that answer. And like you said, I think it does start up front. Like you said, the Rams went from this that wide zone early in the phase. Early in the phase career, and then went to that man gap stuff, man duo stuff in 2023, and they completely pretty much rebuilt that offensive line. You put Alert Jackson left tackle, traded for Kevin Dotson, who was like these were just it was much bigger than you had seen previously in McVay's tenure, and honestly, credit to Alert Jackson and Kevin Dotson just as they started to incorporate more of more of that wide zone back into the offense. Those guys actually move very well for their size.
Like, I'm personally as a coach myself, I like the outside zone, wide zone scheme because it allows cutbacks. It allows you to run boots much more effectively than off of gap power in a lot of ways. And I think that's where Seattle's play action's even struggling a little bit right now with teams is a lot of their play action is based off of inside runs. It's not based off of outside runs where Sam's booting away from things. He's basically faking and setting back up in the pocket. This is where I think, I'll say this. I think one of John Schneider's, as much as he has done a phenomenal job rebuilding this team, I feel one of the biggest issues was letting Damian Lewis go and also moving Damian Lewis to left guard when he was a right guard. His rookie year as a right guard, he was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Then they moved him to left guard and it was kind of okay in a mixed bag, and then they let him walk. I think if they had let Damian Lewis stay at right guard, and if Damian Lewis was still on the Seahawks roster, so if we went left to right, Charles Cross, Gray Zabel, Sundell, Damian Lewis, and Abe Lucas, you would have a very formidable offensive line for Seattle. So,
yeah.
Here's an interesting one. I got two here. Jeanette comes back in as a Rams fan. If McVay goes 13 personnel, it will test the Seahawks defense given how they played last week. So if McVay commits to run, then it will be a big factor. We talked about this a little bit earlier, Blaine. I think Nicky Manwari is the deciding factor in that because he is just such a Swiss Army knife for the Seahawks.
Yeah, the Seahawks defense, it's so unique. Like the Rams get into 13 personnel, and they've had so much success in 13 personnel because they get teams that aren't used to playing in these heavier defensive packages and aren't built to play in these heavier defensive packages. You're able to take advantage of that in the passing game and manipulate those linebackers with motion a little bit more and things like that. But this Seahawks defense, you roll out 13 personnel and Mike McDonald says, yeah, I'm just running nickel anyway because I have this very special player in Nick Manwari, who honestly probably the defensive rookie of the year right now, and he unlocks everything that the Seahawks want to everything that the Seahawks want to do on defense.
Well, and the thing I'll say is the one thing I love about Nicky Manwari being in Seattle and the fact that the NFL decided to let Mike McDonald of all people get him. It's like it would be like if the NFL let Sean McVay get a quarterback that is like his dream reincarnation of Matthew Stafford with a bit more mobility. It'd be like, really, you're going to let that guy get that player? Like, this is what we're going to allow happen. It's kind of what still blows me away that the NFL went, yeah, okay, cool. We'll let, probably the most genetic freak defensive player we've seen in the combine era. And not just like he's a genetic freak and can do all these things, but he's not really a great player on the field. No, a guy that's a pretty good player was the top SEC player. Yeah, we'll let the guy that's the defensive whiz, we'll let him have him there in Seattle. That's just what, Mike needs one here. We'll let him have that guy. But it's the fact that it's allowed Devin Witherspoon to play outside at corner more and become a real shutdown corner in a lot of ways because he has been very good outside. And him and Reek now as a duo is turning into one of the better duos in the NFL at the two outside corner positions now that Reek's kind of got his head screwed on straight, it seems like. So couple more here. We got John back in. Bryce, who do you see taking over the running back coach position next year? I don't see Polamalu returning. This is something I haven't heard on or anything, so I can't speak to it saying that I've talked to anybody inside the building about it. But I get a weird feeling that something occurred there, John, with Polamalu and maybe the philosophy or something just didn't add up. I don't expect him to be back either. And this is pure speculation. I don't know anything. I do think it'll be interesting to see. Maybe it's Outen becomes the running back coach going forward for the Seahawks next year, which wouldn't surprise me. Or maybe there's someone else they've got an eye on that they maybe potentially look to bring in. Who knows? Maybe they'll give Marshawn a call, and Marshawn will become the new Seahawks running back coach. I would pay happily to see Marshawn Lynch as the Seahawks running back coach. I think that'd be a really good situation. But yeah, that's where I kind of will look at that. If I hear anything, I'll make sure to let you guys know. But outside of that, Blaine, you know what? We're gonna wrap this show up here. So final word, give me your prediction score. What happens in this rematch tomorrow night?
I as much as I want to take the Rams, and I so badly want to take them, I could absolutely see them winning this game. Matthew Stafford has never lost to the Seahawks since joining the Rams back in 2021. But I just think without Devontae Adams, without Quentin Lake on the defensive side of the ball, I think in this one that I do see being a really close game, the Seahawks do come out on top, and I will take in another low scoring game. I was wildly off last month. I thought it was going to be a bit of a shootout. So watch this one be a shootout now. But I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I'll take the Seahawks 20-17.
Okay, so I've swung back and forth all week with this, Blaine. I initially started this week with the Rams. I felt the Rams are going to, potentially win this game. The Seahawks offense still scares me, but given these weather conditions, I like the Seahawks defense.
Yep.
I'm going to go 17-10 Seahawks.
Okay.
And I think it'll be a situation where Seattle scores a touchdown late finally, to kind of seal this game, where it'll be like a 10-10 tie through the majority of the game, and it'll end up being 17-10 for a Seahawks win at the end. And I think it's going to make this a very interesting, because I will say this is not the last time these teams will play each other this year, in my opinion. I think there will be another matchup in the playoffs. It's just whether or not it'll be in Lumen or whether or not it'll be in SoFi.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like right now, if you had to ask me who are the two teams playing on conference championship weekend, I would undoubtedly say it's the Rams and Seahawks.
This gives me 2013 vibes of the Niners and Seahawks, when everyone knew that NFC championship game between them was really the Super Bowl, because whoever came out of the AFC wasn't going to give them enough of a scare. And obviously Seattle went on to cream the Denver Broncos and whatnot. I don't see anybody on the AFC side where I go, yeah, the Rams or the Seahawks are not going to match up and play well against that team. Like I don't see a team over there currently that I'm really worried about. It's more of you guys and maybe the Eagles if they can get their stuff going. But you know what, Blaine, I want to thank you, man, for coming on the show. Greatly appreciate having you and your insight there from the LA Rams perspective. So why don't you let my viewers that are here, that are live with us tonight, know where they can find more of your stuff, because you do some great work.
Yeah. Thanks, Bryce. Appreciate me having me on again. This was a great convo, and I always love coming on. But you can find all my stuff over at turfshowtimes.com. I have a lot of written content over there. Follow me on Twitter at bgrisactst. It's right there, my name tag. And then you can like and subscribe my YouTube channel. It's the Rams Call Sheet with Blaine Grisak. So hit the like and subscribe button, even if you're a Seahawks fan, or hit that follow button, and I promise great convo. So.
Yeah, guys. So if you haven't, go over there, sub up to Blaine's stuff. He provides great insight, and it's not biased insight like some people. It is legitimate insight on the game. As you heard, he did pick Seattle to win this game, so that should tell you something right there. Over here, guys, if you haven't, like up, subscribe, click that notification button. Upcoming content. I'm going live in literally another hour here with the Seahawks Syndicate crew. So myself, Brandon Kane, Dan Viens, Mookie Alexander, we're all going to sit down together in an hour, go through a roundtable discussion of everything going on with the Seahawks leading into this game. And then outside of that, Friday night, I will be back with Seahawks Aftermath with Mookie Alexander from Field Goal. So make sure you guys tune in for that live at 6 o'clock on Friday night. And we'll break down everything Rams Seahawks on that Friday night. So before we get out of here, Blaine, I got to ask you one last question. Thoughts on Seattle's rivalry jerseys? Yay or nay?
I think they're a little Oregon Ducks-esque. But as far as the rivalry jerseys go, I actually think they're one of the better ones.
Okay, well, I'll take that. I appreciate that. But and just so everyone knows, Brandon Kane of Hawks Nest will be hosting the syndicate tonight, but I believe myself and Dan will be streaming on all of our platforms there as well. So you guys, depends on who you want to watch through, you'll get it all from all of us. So with that being said, everybody have a good night. Happy holidays to everybody. Stay safe during this holiday break. And for all those down in Washington, stay safe as well with the floods. See you next time. Stay loud, be proud, and go Hawks. Have a good night, everybody.